Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is our monthly GPU prices update for September 2023. And oh my goodness, the GPU market has gone totally bonkers. We've got not one, but two new GPU launches, and gamers, spoiler alert, seem like super excited, at least about one of them. We've got NVIDIA cutting prices on RTX 4000 series cards. And as always, we'll go through the best GPU for September 2023 for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. Remember, if you get value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it.
This video is sponsored by Deepcool and their new CH560 digital PC case. With a customizable digital readout for your CPU and GPU, the CH560 is a sleek, airflow-focused design. It offers maximum cooling capacity with 4 pre-installed ARGB fans and up to a 360mm top-mounted radiator. With compatibility up to eATX motherboards and GPUs up to 360mm, this case has it all. If you want premium cooling and maximum compatibility in a sleek design with a digital readout, check out the CH560 today using the links in the video description.
Before we jump into GPU pricing, I just wanted to welcome you to our brand new studio. That's right, this is a brand new studio. We moved halfway across the United States, and I'd love to tell you that we have the studio finished, more like 3/4 finished right now. We gotta get a video out because the GPU market's going totally insane. But if you want a full tour of the studio, become a channel member. The day after this video goes live, we are gonna do a full live stream build right here in this studio, so check it out. All right, let's start off with AMD Radeon GPU pricing because we got two new GPUs. We'll both talk about the pricing now, and then we'll talk about later in the video in the news section, did they sell out? Did they not sell out? What do I think about the price to performance of both those graphics cards? We also had Starfield just launched, and it's bundled with AMD Radeon GPUs. So as a result of that, you've seen a number of prices go up on some of these Radeon GPUs, although there are some interesting price cuts as well. That's both a result of people buying AMD Radeon GPUs to get the Starfield bundle, but also AMD or the board partners have raised the prices of some of the cards, especially the ones at the bottom. They've raised them up 20 or 30 bucks at times. Clear that they want to take a little bit of profit while the getting is good. Just remember that Starfield bundle, at least at the time of filming, unless AMD extends it, that deal is going to run out in September. Then you'll have until the end of October to redeem your code and get the Starfield game. Starting off with the 7900 XTX, yeah, look at that. They're basically raising the price on the kind of bottom level models up to $939, right? Good model. It's a Sapphire Pulse 7900 XTX with the promo code, gets you down to $939. I still think this is really good value. Of course, we'll talk about the best price performance GPUs at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K later in the video as well. And then the 7900 XT, this is a GPU that they're definitely trying to squeeze you on right now. $749 had been a pretty flat price, and it's a pretty good price for the performance, but they've come up on all the base models that had been selling at to $779 right now. In fact, you can't even find any of those cheaper models on Newegg. I think it's $799. You got to go over to Amazon right now to get it with the XFX speedster merge. Obviously, we've got the 7800 XT just launched. We'll go through that in just a moment in terms of did it sell out, did it not sell out? $499. But look at the 6800 XT. They've cut the price on almost all of these cards to below $500, except for kind of some straggler models that probably they've just forgotten about. But you can get one right now for $484. That's a pretty huge price cut from where it was just last month at $520. So it's come down about 40 bucks on there. And then we look at the 7700 XT coming in at $449. As compared to the 6800, which as we'll see later, that's about where it's coming in terms of performance, although it has 4 less gigs of VRAM. And the interesting thing here is that 6800 continues to be around that $430 to $440 price point, so it's cheaper, 4 gigs more VRAM, and the same performance. I'm not sure why people are buying the 7700 XT. Going through the rest of these, look, the 6950 XT I think is on its way out, just like we saw with the 3090 and 3080. The final few models are just kind of crazy listings right now. 629 still not a terrible price for it, but if you want one of those GPUs, go ahead and pick it up because I think they're going to go away permanently. Then we look at like the RX 7600. Look at that huge price cut, 10% price cut on the 7600 right now. You can get a couple of these different models for $229 or $230 $39 right now if you want the Power Color Hellhound Radeon one with the nice RGB to it. So this is probably where this GPU always needed to be. It is nice to see it continue to fall in price because it's only got 8 gigs of VRAM. Honestly, in my estimation, if you're going to replace the 6600, that's selling for $199 right now. I'm not sure why the 7600 sells for much more than that. The rest of the market, look, the 6700 to 6750 XT continues to bounce around that $330 to $320 price point, as does the 6700, bounce around that $270 price point. Otherwise, the rest of the market is pretty much stable. Before we jump into NVIDIA GPU pricing, let's look at Intel GPU pricing, and Intel's totally on a roller coaster right now. I don't understand what they're thinking over there. One month they're cutting prices to something that looks absolutely amazing, and the next month the prices go right back up and they're not competitive at all. Intel, you got to buy market share. What are you doing over there? Let's start with the A770. We only look at the 16 gig model because the A750 and A770, the performance differences, at least the ones I've seen, are so small, you're really just buying that card for the VRAM. So looking at the 16 gig version, $329 up from $299. Again, I just don't understand why that card needed to go up $30. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Intel, help yourself out here. And then on the A750, relatively competitive at $199, although again, no Starfield bundle. I guess these would be competitive for people who don't want to play Starfield. Right back to $219 right now over at Amazon. All right, jumping over to NVIDIA GPU prices in September 2023, and we don't see a lot of change, except for one very, very significant change, basically, which is the RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. They have cut the price on that card by $50, and it appears to be kind of an official price cut without being an MSRP adjustment. We know that in 2023, companies never adjust MSRPs anymore. They basically use retail back channels through their board partners, through their retail partners, in order to kind of reprice out those cards rather than changing the MSRP. So 4060 Ti, a number of the models have come down to $449. And we're not just talking the cheaper kind of board partners like Zotac. There's the Asus Dual right there for $449. I will say it looks like a number of these models have sold through, like the Gigabyte Windforce sold through. That's actually a really good cooler on that card. MSI Ventus at $479 sold through for the 3-fan card. And then the Ventus 2-fan card has sold out at $449. I don't think that's because there's been a huge amount of demand. Remember, we looked at this before. There were not a lot of these cards initially produced. So I still think we're seeing trickles come in, but the $449 price seems to have motivated at least a couple of buyers to clear out some of the stock that they already have. We'll have to see if NVIDIA continues to manufacture this GPU in any kind of numbers or not. But it was interesting that the price cut came, of course, days before the 7700 XT and 7800 XT launched. Yay, competition. Competition is good for the marketplace. It's also nice to see that NVIDIA has not completely abandoned gaming GPUs. Maybe Jensen, he's a founder CEO. Maybe he just got too much of an ego stake to let that go completely while they shift almost everything else to AI right now. So that's overall good to see. Honestly, for the rest of these GPUs, not much change in the market. A little fluctuation on the 4070 Ti with the 779 model going back up to 789. The RTX 3060 8 gigabyte continues to fall in price now down to $237. Remember, that's not a 3060 12 gig. It's not the same card. It's more like a 3050 Ti. 3050, by the way, continues to fluctuate around $220, back down to $219. GPUs still overpriced. We'll go through the best price to performance GPUs in just a moment. All right, let's jump into the news. And RX 7700 XT, 7800 XT launched on September 6th. That's right, the same day that Starfield came out, the official release of Starfield, not the pre-release. Don't know why they didn't do it with the pre-release. That may have made a little bit more sense. But $449 for the 7700 XT and $499 for the 7800 XT, as we've already gone over. What was the reception? It's basically a tale of two GPU launches. That's right, I'm gonna go Charles Dickens on you here. A tale of two GPU launches. On the one hand, the 7800 XT, look at that. They have all sold out. You can still back order 3 cards, but you're back ordering the cards. They're not currently available at retail. And all of these models, and I was tracking this, they all had stock during the launch. They have all completely sold out. And we know through other leaks and other sources that there was a pretty good volume on launch day. So AMD, you did it. You did the thing that's only happened, this is the 3rd time basically in this generation, which you sold out a GPU launch. The other launches to sell out, RTX 4090 at launch, and that one sold out for quite a while too. And then the RX 7900 XTX sold out back in December, all the way really for about a month and a half. So look at that. What this is showing to me is that gamers do want value. As soon as you put value in front of them, we'll go over the performance in just a moment. It's a little spoiler alert here. But once you put performance and value in front of them at this price point, they're gonna pull the trigger. They wanna buy cards. They just don't wanna buy garbage cards that have been shoved down our throat. And speaking of that, let's look at the 7700 XT, and it's a totally different story. Not a single one of these GPUs has sold out. Let that sink in for a second. How is it you had one GPU completely sell out and then the other GPU, everyone's like, nah, I don't think so. It's because it's not priced appropriately. Again, there's not a value proposition here. That's what people are saying. That's what consumers are saying. And I just don't understand how the companies can't get it in their heads that this is what needs to happen. You will sell more graphics cards. Maybe they don't want to sell more graphics cards. I don't know. I'm not part of their business unit. I'm not a fly on the wall in their meetings. I'm just a consumer like you are out there, just scratching my head when I see these launches that don't make any sense. They did the same thing with the 7900 XTX and XT. The XT was terribly priced at the time. Then they cut the XT price down to $750 eventually, and it sells because it's a good value. I expect the same thing to happen with the 7700 XT. Don't be surprised when you see that go to $399, then $379, possibly even $349 at some point, maybe in about 5 or 6 months. But $449, clearly not a winner price. But what about performance? Well, basically, let's look at Tom's Hardware, and we'll also look at hardware and box data. In terms of rasterized performance, they both kind of share the same thing. 7800 XT, slightly faster than the 6800 XT, and about 7% faster than the 4070. Rasterized performance, we'll get to ray tracing in just a second. 7700 XT, on the other hand, it's basically an RX 6800 with 4 gigs less VRAM and a little bit more expensive, so I don't really understand that. But they all crush the 4060 Ti, crush the 4060 Ti. 16 gigabyte version, 8 gigabyte version, it really doesn't matter. In NVIDIA, that was really the 4060. We all know that. Stop trying to pull a fast one on us like this. That should have been the 4060. The 4070 should have been the 4060 Ti. We know that you basically slotted everything down. We're not happy about it. AMD did the same thing to us with the 7800 XT. Probably should have just been the 7800, not the 7800 XT. But all of that aside, that's where the performance shakes out in terms of rasterized performance. Interestingly enough, when we look at ray tracing, the performance is kind of all over the place. If you look at the suite of games, and I think this is really suite of game dependent, Tom's Hardware shows the 4070 about 20% faster than the 7800 XT raster in terms of ray tracing. And that's typically what you'd expect from NVIDIA, or what we've come to expect in terms of the difference. Now, I know only about 20% of you out there care about ray tracing, so we won't spend that much time on it. But interestingly enough, when we look at hardware on boxes number, another 6-game average, I think there's only one title that they have in common here, that actually the RX 7800 XT is only 10% behind the RTX 4070 in ray tracing. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. And it's kind of shocking to me that that's where they've come. It looks like they've made a number of driver updates to various games. AMD is closing the gap on ray tracing. Of course, a lot of people would say, well, Jason, I don't want to get 69 FPS at 1440p. I want 100 and something FPS, so I turn ray tracing off. I know that's where about 80% of you are, so you can make your own determination in terms of how important this is. But it's definitely an area where AMD does appear to be closing the gap. So what's my verdict on these GPUs? Well, let's start off with the positive. Number one, they both come with Starfield, so that's like a premium edition. It's a $100 value, so you're not going to have to buy that game. If you don't care about that game, that's one thing, but clearly from the launch of that game, a lot of people do care about it. So that's a big, big benefit right now. And let's start off with the good one. Let's start off with the RX 7800 XT. $499. That is a great launch. Let me tell you why. People are like, Jason, it's the same price as, just about the same price, 6800 XT. It's got the same performance. How can it be better? Remember, the 6800 XT launched at $650. $650. So we have pulled this level of performance down to $500. And even recently, that 6800 XT, yes, there was maybe one model at $499, but the vast majority of them were like $540, $550. So we're getting an overall pretty steep price cut. We're getting some additional features, and in terms of the overall value proposition this generation versus last generation, it does have a benefit. I also will say, while it's not the greatest launch ever, of course, it's not the 1080 Ti reborn, don't get me wrong. While it's not the GPU launch that maybe we deserve, it is the GPU launch that PC gaming needed right now after that horrible span that we've gone through with the scalpers and GPU miners buying up all the cards, GPU prices going crazy. this is the step that we needed to go in the right direction. In terms of the 7700 XT, don't buy it. Just don't buy it. AMD will cave before we do. $449. This is a good card at a bad price. It's a good card at a bad price, and we know AMD that we can lean on them. So just don't buy this card until it comes down to $399, $379, possibly $349, because you know it's going there. Don't buy it. And rejoice that the 7800 XT might portend new chapter in GPU launches where these companies aren't trying to constantly rip us off for every last nickel, and we can kind of meet together in the middle at a much better value point. I want to cover one more thing just very quickly, and that is something that I was worried about in a recent Q&A, which is that with NVIDIA rapidly going after AI, that they might start cutting back product development on the gaming side. Hardware Times is saying that they have allegedly cut back their budget for their driver team. So when you see day one drivers like their terrible drivers for Starfield and how low NVIDIA's performance in that game was, obviously a lot of tech companies struggle with. When you suddenly have, hey, this is a huge opportunity for us over here, the amount that they could make on AI absolutely dwarfs anything they could even hope to make on gaming. So I just wanted to put that out there, have people consider that, especially right now as you're considering what kind of GPU to buy. Let's jump into the best GPU for gaming 2023 in September. If you're not familiar with how we do this, we basically take all the GPUs out there that have 8 gigs or more VRAM. We don't recommend less than that. We take their performance versus an RX 570, and then we take their price, either used or new. We do prefer new cards unless there's a 30% or more discount. And then we get a price to performance. And then we divide them up, best card for 200, best card for 1440p, 4K, and so on. Remember, this is linked down in the video description. You can jump in the spreadsheet yourself. These are US-based numbers. Go ahead and feel free to put your own numbers in here instead. Jumping into the best GPU under $200 in September 2023. And listen, not a lot of changes, but some important ones. If you only got about $50 to $100 to spend, start off with the RX 570 8GB model. Don't get the 4GB, they're the same price. Get the 8GB model, $53. That'll get you started in building a super budget gaming PC. And that would be my top pick. But if you have a little bit more to spend, you could pick up something like, especially at the $100 level, anything from a 1070 to a 1070 Ti to even a 1080. I know those cards are a little bit older. They're about 6+ years old at this point. So you could also consider spending a little bit more for 123 on an RX 5700 XT that will absolutely destroy everything else in terms of performance underneath that price point. So consider that as well. That continues to come down in price. Moving up closer to $200, I still like the GTX 1080 Ti. $168. I think it's come up a little bit in terms of the overall price from last month. Still remains a good card because 11 gigs of VRAM is hard to find at that price point. In fact, it's impossible. And then in terms of your new options here, you are limited. The Intel RX off the table, but the RX 6600, the thing that's also going to propel that is you get the standard edition of Starfield. That's a $69 value. So if you want Starfield, get the 6600. It doesn't have a ton of power for that game, but it's pretty good. You could also look at the 6650 XT if that's important to you. Let's jump to the best high FPS 1080p card. So this is where we've got at least 10 gigs of VRAM, so we can play all the titles at 1080p. And the GPU performance score is 180 or higher, and these cards cost less than $350. And honestly, not a ton of change, but some important ones again. We already talked about the 1080 Ti. I think that's a great card to pick up. I know it's old though. It's 6+ years old. The RX 6700 with 10 gigs of VRAM for about $270, $280, kind of bounces around those two price points. That's the one I target. And that was in our best Starfield build that I would look at because that's going to give you solid enough 1080p performance in Starfield. Yes, you're going to turn on the high settings, which also turn on FSR by default, but that's going to give you enough punch for that game. And 10 gigs of VRAM is going to give you a little bit more longevity. In terms of NVIDIA GPUs here, you get 3060 12 gig, $269. I continue to like that card. Although that 2080 Ti, I got to tell you, it keeps coming down in price to the point where I'm like, maybe you should consider it over the 3060, especially given the fact it's way more performative and it only has 1 gig less of VRAM on it. yeah, it does cost a little bit more. And then of course we got the 6700 XT, 6750 XT, which is just killer card. I mean, that is going to be, in terms of when we look back at this generation, this is going to be the star of the overall generation, the 6700 XT. Let's jump into the best 1440p graphics card in September 2023. And wow, look at that. The 7800 XT and 7700 XT, they actually make the list. I think that's like the first cards in this generation that on launch actually make the list, because this is just a top 10 list. The 4070 is not on this list. It's on this list somewhere. It's just further down than top 10. 4060 Ti, 16 gig is not on this list. There's a lot of cards not, 4070 Ti is not on this list. 7900 XT is not on this list. So there's a lot of cards not on this list. And that just means that there's other cards that are way better value. Let's start off with some of those values out there. RTX 3080 12 gig. Now we didn't go through the used pricing this month. We'll jump back into it next month. We just didn't have time for it. But the price on those 3080s, 12 gig and 10 gig has come down quite a bit since the previous month. So check those out if you're open to buying something used. And definitely if you want NVIDIA and you're open to buying something used. If instead you're looking for something a little cheaper, check out the 6700, 6750 XT, brand new. We already talked about those cards, but fantastic for 1440p, 144 hertz refresh rate monitors. 2 thumbs up there. The 6800 XT obviously edging out the 7800 XT, and the 6800 edging out the 7700 XT because of the pricing differences, just pure pricing differences. So if you want something that's slightly cheaper, don't feel bad getting the 6800 XT unless for some reason you decide you have to have AV1 encoding, then yeah, spend a little bit more and get the 7700 XT. But those are our top values right now. Moving over to the best 1440p high FPS, so like 240 hertz refresh rate here. This is where the GPU score is 300 or higher, and we're looking for 12 gigs or more of VRAM. And some of the similar names at the top, but a little bit of shuffling at the bottom, especially as we drop out some of those weaker 1440p cards out of the equation. 6800 XT, very at the top card right now in terms of new. Mostly again, pricing, 6800, again, pricing, good cards if you're targeting that higher refresh rate. But the 7800 XT makes a good value argument as well. It's not that far behind the 6800 XT. Meanwhile, the 7700 XT kind of is that far behind. It's quite a bit more expensive. It's got less VRAM to it. I would get a 6800 right now. Remember, ignore the 7700 XT is my advice. If you're looking for something NVIDIA, again, I think mostly you're focused here on used options. RTX 3080 12 gig used. The 3080 Ti is a pretty good value, 12 gig used. But then if you want something new, honestly, you're stuck with the 4060 Ti 16 gig or the 4070 12 gig, neither of which is really great, although they do make the top 10 list. Let's jump to the best 4K graphics cards in September 2023. Remember, this is where the graphics card score is 380 or higher, and we're gonna go with 16 gigs or more of VRAM. I know some people think that's kind of punishing, but remember, with ray tracing turned on at 1440p, you can already run out of VRAM. So at 4K, we definitely want to make sure we have at least 16 gigs. That's my recommendation. In terms of new graphics cards, the 6800 XT, especially with those price cuts coming down from $530 down to $484, has just shot up this list. 7800 XT, clearly a good value in terms of new GPUs. 6950 XT kind of really holding its place, holding its own in there at $629 as well. Unfortunately, the big problem for NVIDIA is their cards just don't have enough VRAM, and I would not spend a lot of money on one of those cards. You got the 4090, it's great that that card is $1599, it's at MSRP. If you have all the monies, that's what you're buying because that's the king, right? 4080 is kind of in a no man's land. I would go 7900 XTX. And we've seen that card continue to pull away from the 4080. Obviously the 7900 XT, I liked it a lot better at 750 than I do at 779, but still comparatively, there's not much competition out there. Let's play everyone's favorite game. Should you buy now or should you wait? Well, honestly, on the one hand, you're like, all the graphics cards are out. Of course you should buy now, right? But should you? Let's ask the question, what's coming down the pike? Black Friday. Black Friday is about 2.5 months away as I'm filming this. Is that enough time to wait to save 40 or 50 bucks on a GPU? It's just right there on the edge for me. I wouldn't do it. I'd buy the GPU, but it might be for some people. And of course, we might have a second Amazon Prime Day. We had a second Amazon Prime Day last year in October, remember? That could happen this year as well. But something that might motivate you to buy right now is the Starfield deal, which right now runs out at the end of September. So that's all kind of in the mix. Let's take a look at the high end. Honestly, green light, 4090 remains the king. So if you got enough money for a 4090, grab it. If not, the 7900 XTX or 7900 XT, the mid-range, it just continues to be AMD. It's the 7800 XT. Big winner. 6800 XT if you don't care about the AV1 encoding, or 6800 non-XT right now. Those remain really good options. And then of course, as we get down kind of more towards the more budgetish 1440p lane, I hate to call it budgetish because it's still $330 for an RX 6700 XT or 6750 XT. Those cards remain so solid in terms of their value, so solid in terms of their value. And I wouldn't wait for the 7700 XT to come down. AMD might get stubborn on that, who knows. 6700 XT, just grab it. You get Starfield Premium Edition with it. Your NVIDIA alternative here is really the 3060 12GB. And at the budget tier, honestly, you got a lot of used options that I think are phenomenal out there. I love the 5700 XT for about $120. I like any of the 10 series cards as long as you're cool with buying an older card, but you got a lot of options out there in terms of that used market. Remember, if you got value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Hey, what do you think about the new studio? I mean, it's just coming along. This is just one angle. I can't wait to show you the rest. If you want to see the rest the day after this video comes out, become a member. We're going to do a members only live stream of a full build right here. We're going to be building a mega PC with an RTX 4090 and 7950X. Check it out. If you missed our best Starfield builds, check it out right here. We go through what I think we need at every budget level for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K Starfield. And we'll catch you on the next one.